Hello, it's so good to see you. I've missed these quiet moments with you. Stay with me a little longer?
Hello again, everyone. Tonight's story is about two rivals who couldn't stand each other until a storm, one bed, and years of secret longing made it impossible to keep pretending. Because sometimes the person who challenges you the most is the one who's been choosing you all along. So settle in. This one's going to hurt a little before it heals. Chapter 1. One Room. The first time I seriously thought about running away barefoot in the rain, I was standing in the glittering lobby of the Ashcroft Hotel at 11:42 p.m. while the front desk clerk gave me that polite, exhausted smile that people in hospitality deploy when they're about to ruin your night and they know it. Behind her, the chandelier threw fractured light across the marble floor. Outside, Philadelphia was drowning in silver sheets of rain so heavy the street had become a river, and the taxi that had dropped us off had already disappeared into the dark like it was glad to be rid of us. "I'm so sorry," the clerk said, tapping her keyboard one last time with the energy of someone performing a final, futile ritual. "The symposium block only has one active reservation remaining. We've called every property within a 15-minute radius. There's simply nothing available tonight." She paused. One room. Beside me, Liora Halden closed her umbrella with crisp, unhurried precision, shook 3 drops of water from the handle, and stayed entirely silent. That silence of hers had always been its own kind of weapon. I had known Liora Halden for 2 years, 1 month, and approximately 18 days. Not that I had ever counted, and not that the specific texture of every argument we'd ever had was stored anywhere in my memory with unusual clarity. We had met in Professor Sethi's constitutional theory seminar in our first semester, when she had calmly dismantled my interpretation of the Commerce Clause in front of 14 people with the precision of a surgeon and the affect of someone commenting on mild weather. I had spent the following week constructing a 12-page rebuttal that Sethi had called the most aggressively well-sourced response paper I have received in 11 years of teaching. It had gone like that ever since. 2 years of seminars, symposiums, moot court competitions, and faculty receptions where Liora Halden and I orbited each other like 2 planets with overlapping gravitational fields, close enough to exert pull, careful enough never to collide. Until tonight. "One room," I repeated. My voice came out very even. I was proud of that. "King bed, Miss Penn," the clerk confirmed, with the sympathy of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. I turned to look at Liora. Rain still clung to the sharp line of her jaw, caught in her dark lashes, traced a single line down her neck that disappeared into the collar of her coat. She looked annoyingly composed, annoyingly precise, annoyingly perfect in the way she always did, which was something I had categorically refused to acknowledge for 26 months and which I was refusing to acknowledge right now. "We can ask for extra blankets," she said. Her voice was calm. It was always calm. I laughed, sharp and a little dangerous, the laugh I used when I was about to say something I'd regret, or something I'd be very satisfied with, and I hadn't decided which. "That's your big solution? 2 years of combined academic achievement, and your contribution to this situation is extra blankets?" "It's practical." "It's a bed, Liora." "I'm aware of what a bed is, Liora." My name and her voice still hit like thunder. I don't know when that had started. I suspected it had always been that way, and I had simply been very disciplined about not noticing. Professor Sethi was stuck at O'Hare. The storm had grounded everything on the eastern seaboard. Every hotel in a 15-minute radius was hosting either displaced symposium attendees or people sensible enough to have booked earlier. We had been last. We had been last because we had both assumed the other was handling the reservation, and we had apparently been too proud to confirm that assumption until we were standing soaking wet in the Ashcroft lobby at 1:45. That was, objectively, a very us situation. I took one key card from the clerk with a smile I did not feel. Fine. But I want it noted for the record that if this room has only one pillow, I am escalating this to Sethi the moment the airport reopens. I'll note that for the record, said the clerk, who very clearly would not. Alara took the second key card. Thank you, she told the clerk, with the natural courtesy she had for everyone except me, which I had noticed and which had never bothered me at all. We rode the elevator in a silence that had a specific texture. Not empty, not comfortable, but charged, the way air gets before lightning. In the mirror on the elevator wall, we looked like the concept of contrast. Me with my hair rain-frizzed into something approximating a weather system, my coat spotted dark with water, my bag slightly lopsided from where I'd shoved my laptop in at an angle. Alara, with every line of her clean, her dark hair damp but controlled, her coat buttoned to the throat, her posture the posture of someone who had decided years ago that the world did not get to make her look disordered. We did not speak. The room was on the 14th floor. It was elegant in the way that things are when someone has spent enough money to make elegance feel effortless. Warm lighting, tall windows, furniture that cost more per piece than my monthly rent. A writing desk, an armchair, floor-length curtains that the storm was pressing against from the outside, the glass trembling. And one very large, very white king bed centered against the far wall like a statement. Well, said Alara. I laughed. It was genuine this time, startled out of me by the absurdity of it, and for a moment, just a moment, the corner of her mouth moved in something that wasn't quite a smile but was adjacent to one. If the building burns down tonight, I said, dropping my bag on the armchair, I want it formally on record that I died offended. Noted. She set her bag by the writing desk with the care of someone who organized her things as a matter of principle. I'll take the left side. I'll take the right. Do you want to call room service? The kitchen closes at midnight. It was such a normal, practical question. We ordered room service. We sat at opposite ends of the room and ate in a careful silence, broken only by the rain against the glass and the occasional roll of thunder. And I thought about how strange it was to be having dinner with Alara Halden without a moderator present. We had never been alone together, not like this, not without a seminar table between us, or a moot court podium, or the buffer of 14 other graduate students and a professor who could redirect things when they got too sharp. Just us. And one king bed. And a storm that showed no sign of stopping. I had absolutely no idea what came next, but I was starting to suspect it was going to change everything. Chapter 2. Small Talk and Sharp Edges. We managed 45 minutes of careful, surface-level conversation. It was, in its own way, impressive. Two people who had spent 2 years finding the exact right words to take apart each other's arguments in public, now working hard to find words that didn't lead anywhere dangerous. We talked about the symposium panels. We talked about Sethi's paper on federalism that had come out last month. We talked about the storm, which was the conversational equivalent of a safe harbor. Observable, impersonal, something you could look at together without it meaning anything. I was sitting on my side of the bed with my back against the headboard and my notes open in my lap, pretending to review them. Liora was at the writing desk with her own laptop, the blue light of the screen catching the angle of her cheekbone. She had taken off her coat. She was wearing a white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. She had long fingers. I had never specifically noticed her hands before, which was obviously not true because I had very specifically and deliberately not noticed her hands on many previous occasions. "Your outline for tomorrow's panel is wrong," she said, without looking up from her screen. I looked up from my notes. "I beg your pardon?" "The third point. You're framing the dormancy doctrine as primarily historical when Sethi's current position contextualizes it as ongoing. If you lead with the historical frame, Marcus Chen is going to cut you off at the knees before you get to the comparative section, and you won't have time to recover." She paused. "I read your abstract in the symposium program." I stared at her. "You read my abstract." "I read everyone's abstract. It's called preparation." "You read mine specifically enough to identify a structural vulnerability." She finally looked up. Her expression was, as always, composed. But there was something in it, something careful, something that was choosing its words the way you choose your footing on uncertain ground. "I read yours first," she said. And then, as if she'd said something she hadn't meant to, she looked back at her screen. "I read yours first." I put my notes down. I looked at the rain against the window for a moment, then looked back at her. "Liora, why did you read mine first?" A pause. The rain filled it. "Because you're the most interesting person presenting tomorrow," she said, with the flatness of someone stating an observable fact. "And I wanted to know what I was up against." That was classic Liora Halden. Deliver something that could be taken as a compliment inside a frame that was purely competitive, so she could never be accused of either. I had seen her do it in seminars. I had never had it aimed directly at me, in a hotel room, at midnight, with nowhere to redirect it. "You think I'm interesting," I said. "I think your arguments are interesting, which isn't the same thing." "Isn't it?" She didn't answer. I watched her fingers still on her keyboard. "Your left side," I said, changing direction, "of the bed. You specified it immediately. Do you always take the left side?" The tension in the room shifted. Not less, but different. "When I have a choice," she said. "Do you not sleep on the right?" "I sleep facing the window. Left side puts the window on my right, which means I can see the rain without craning my neck." She glanced at me. "Do you have a preference?" "I usually sleep facing the door." "Old habit?" "My mother traveled a lot when I was young. I got used to being the one who heard things first." I hadn't meant to say that. It was a true thing and a private thing, and I wasn't sure what had made it come out, except that it was late and the rain was loud, and Liora was looking at me with an expression that was, for once, not calibrating for debate. "My mother didn't travel," she said after a moment. "She was just absent. In the room, but not present." She said it the way you say something you've said to yourself so many times it's lost most of its edge. Not painless, just practiced. "I used to sleep facing the wall so I didn't have to figure out what expression to have in case she came in." We looked at each other across the elegant hotel room, with its warm light and its one king bed and 2 years of carefully maintained distance, and something shifted in the air between us. "We should sleep," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended. "Yes," she agreed. She closed her laptop. We did the logistical negotiation of bathroom turns and light switches with the focused efficiency of 2 people concentrating very hard on the practical. When I came out of the bathroom in my sleep clothes, which were more comfortable than presentable, a fact I was choosing not to be embarrassed about, Liora was already on her side of the bed, facing the window, one lamp still on. I got into my side, pulled the covers to my waist, looked at the ceiling. "Liora?" "Yes?" "Thank you for the note about the outline." A pause. "You would have caught it yourself by morning," she said. "You always do." I turned my head to look at her back. The lamp was still on, its light warm against the white of her shirt, the dark of her hair against the pillow. I always do. She knew that about me. How many things had she been watching, quietly, all this time? I turned off my lamp. The room went dark except for the storm light through the curtains. Rain hammered the glass. Thunder rolled somewhere over the river. I did not sleep for a long time. Chapter 3. The Crack in the Wall. It was the ankle that cracked everything open. I had noticed the slight stiffness in my gait when we'd walked from the taxi to the lobby, the old sprain I'd picked up during a disastrous attempt at recreational tennis in October that hadn't quite healed right. I had noticed it and categorically declined to mention it because mentioning it would have required Liora to slow down for me, and that was not a dynamic I was willing to introduce. But at 1 a.m, when I got up for water and misjudged the unfamiliar room in the dark, I caught the corner of the luggage stand with my left foot and made a sound I immediately regretted. "Liora." She was awake. Of course she was awake. Liora Halden probably slept with one eye open on principle. "I'm fine," I said, which was technically still to be determined. She had the lamp on in 3 seconds. She was sitting up, the white button-down slightly creased from the pillow, her hair loose in a way I had never seen because she always had it pulled back at the faculty. She looked like someone I'd never quite had access to before. "Sit on the bed," she said. "It's a bruise, at most. Sit down, Liora." I sat. She pulled back the hem of my sleep pants without asking permission and looked at the ankle with the focused attention she gave to everything she decided merited it. Her fingers were very careful, very precise, pressing along the bone to assess. "It's the October sprain," I said. "It's not fully healed." "I know." She looked up. "I noticed you favoring it at the Hartley reception in November. I wondered if you'd seen anyone about it." She had noticed. In November. 4 months ago. She had been tracking the way I walked for 4 months and had said absolutely nothing. "You noticed," I said. "I noticed things about you," she said, matter-of-factly, and then continued assessing my ankle as if she hadn't just placed a small explosion in the middle of the room. She wrapped it from her own first aid kit. She had a travel first aid kit, of course she did. Liora Halden was prepared for everything except, apparently, the consequences of her own honesty. And then she didn't move right away. She stayed there, at the edge of the bed, fingers still loosely around my ankle, looking at the window where rain was still pressing against the glass. "My clothes are soaked through," I said, because I needed to say something. My coat and the outer layers I'd worn tonight were still damp from the storm, draped over the bathroom rail. The condensation from the hot water in the bathroom didn't help. She stood up, went to her bag, came back with her other button down, folded precisely, of course, packed with the organizational care of someone who treated a suitcase like a filing system. She held it out to me. "I packed an extra," she said. "Take it." I looked at the shirt, looked at her. "Alara, it's cotton, it's dry. Take the shirt, Liora." I took the shirt. I changed in the bathroom and came back out, and the look that crossed Alara Halden's face when she saw me in her shirt was something I was going to spend considerable time thinking about later, because it was not a look I had ever seen from her before. It was there for only 2 seconds, a specific, unguarded, unstrategic 2 seconds, and then it was gone, replaced by her usual composure. But I had seen it. I sat back on my side of the bed. She sat on hers. The lamp was still on. The rain was softer now, less battering, more like a steady conversation. "What actually happened with the October tennis match?" she asked. It was such an unexpected question that I laughed. I was playing against my friend Priya, who is, it turns out, aggressively competitive in recreational sports, and I went for a ball that I had absolutely no business going for and landed wrong. I paused. "Don't tell anyone. I am supposed to maintain an image of general competence." "Your image of competence is not dependent on tennis ability." "Easy for you to say. I suspect you're inexplicably good at tennis." "I'm adequate," she said. "My mother made me take lessons from ages 8 to 14 because she thought athletic accomplishment was a social currency. I quit when I left for university." "And is it social currency?" "For the kind of social world she was invested in, yes." A pause. "Not for any world I wanted." It was the second time tonight she had mentioned her mother in a way that carried weight. I looked at her. She was looking at the window. "What did you want?" I asked, quietly, not a debate question, a real one. She was silent for a moment that stretched and stretched. "This," she said finally, and it was clearly not the first word she'd reached for, but it was the one she chose. "An argument worth having, work worth doing, people who take things seriously." She glanced at me. "You always take things seriously." "Is that why you argue with me?" "Among other reasons." She didn't explain what the others were. I pulled my knees up to my chest and looked at her in the lamp's warm light. My shirt, her shirt, was soft and smelled faintly of the cedar from her bag. "I argued with you the first day because you were the most confident person in that room and I was terrified," I said. She blinked. The word terrified had landed. "I had a scholarship that felt like it could be taken away at any moment," I continued. "My father left when I was 12. My mother worked 2 jobs to get me to university, and I was not going to waste that. And you walked in on the first day looking like you'd been born knowing exactly where you belonged, and I thought, that. I need to be that. So I fought you because you seemed like the measure of something." The rain, the lamp, her eyes on me. "I was performing," she said. Her voice was different, lower, more careful. "The first day, every day, for months, the confidence was practiced. I had spent 4 years at undergrad being told I was too much, too intense, too opinionated, too cold. I came to Sethi's program and I decided I would rather be too much on my own terms than be diminished on someone else's." She paused. "And then you argued back." nobody argued back. Everyone else managed me or deferred to me. You argued back, and I thought... She stopped. What did you think? She looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her in 2 years. Something open and slightly terrified and very, very honest. I thought, finally, she said. The words settled over the room like snow, quiet, covering everything. Finally. Chapter 4. In the Dark. We turned the lamp off eventually. We lay on our respective sides of the very large, very white bed, and the rain came down, and neither of us slept. I knew she wasn't sleeping because her breathing had never settled into the rhythm of it, and because Liora Halden was not someone who could let a conversation land and then simply rest. She processed. She organized. I could feel it in the quality of her stillness, not relaxed, but considered. Liora. Her voice in the dark was different from her voice in seminars. Lower, less defended. Still here, I said. I've been trying not to want you since the first week you argued with me in Sethi's seminar. The words arrived with such clean precision that for a moment I thought I'd imagined them, the way you sometimes hear your own name in white noise and it turns out to be the air conditioning. But the dark room was quiet, and the rain was just rain, and she had said exactly what she'd said. I turned onto my back, stared at the ceiling. How long, I said, have you been sitting on that? 2 years. A pause. 1 month, approximately. The same count I had, because of course it was. Liora, my voice came out unsteady and I didn't try to fix it. You argued with me for 2 years. Yes. You took apart my interpretations in front of 14 people. The interpretations were wrong. Wanting you and thinking you're wrong about the dormancy doctrine are not mutually exclusive. I made a sound that was almost a laugh. My chest was doing something complicated, a compression, a release, a sensation like a window being opened in a room that had been sealed too long. I sat next to Priya at the Hartley reception in November, I said, and I watched you talk to Professor Albright for 45 minutes, and I told myself I was cataloging your rhetorical technique. I paused. I went home and I couldn't sleep. Silence. I almost didn't come to this symposium, she said, because you were presenting. Because I didn't know how much longer I could be in the same room as you and keep... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I turned my head. In the dark, I could make out the shape of her, the pale of the shirt, the dark of her hair against the pillow. Facing the window, the storm light moving. Liora. Yes? Look at me. A pause, then, slowly, she turned. And we were looking at each other across the short geography of a king bed in a hotel in Philadelphia, while a nor'easter pressed its hands against the glass, and 2 years of carefully maintained distance became the most fragile thing in the room. I'm scared, I said, because it was true, and because she had given me truth tonight, and I wasn't going to answer it with anything less. Not of you, of how much this already is, before anything even... I know, she said. I'm scared too. You don't seem scared. I've had 2 years of practice not seeming it. I reached across the space between us, slowly. She watched my hand move. When my fingers found hers on top of the covers, she turned her hand over and held on. We lay there for a moment, just that, held hands in the dark, rain on the window, the sounds of the city muffled by the storm. "Hi," I said, which was possibly the least eloquent thing I had ever said. The corner of her mouth moved. "Hi." "I think you should know," I said, "that you are the most irritating person I have ever met in my life." "I know. And also, I know that too." I hadn't finished. "You were going to say something sentimental and then soften it with qualifications. I was saving you the trouble." "Alara." "Yes?" "Stop talking." She did. I moved the small remaining distance across the bed, and when I kissed her, it was soft and a little uncertain, the way any real thing is when it's happening for the first time, before you have any of the language for it. Her free hand came up slowly to my face, her thumb against my cheekbone, deliberate and tender in a way that broke something open in my chest. We pulled back and looked at each other, this close. 2 years, she said softly. 2 years, I confirmed. And then we kissed again, and this time it wasn't uncertain at all. Chapter 5. The Long Dark and the Long Light. The night was long and slow and very gentle. Not in the way of things that rush, in the way of things that have been waiting. There was no urgency except the kind that comes from years of not being able to say something and finally saying it, which is its own deep and particular relief. We moved slowly, carefully, learning each other the way you learn a language you've wanted to speak for a long time. Some things intuitive, some things requiring repetition, all of it worth the effort. She was precise, even now, even without her armor. She paid attention to everything, to the breath I drew when she was close, to the exact amount of pressure that was right, to the way I said her name. She cataloged me the way she cataloged arguments, but without any intention of dismantling, only of understanding. I had thought somehow that she would be more contained than this. I had thought that the composure was all the way down. But she wasn't contained at all underneath. She was just private, which is a different thing. Private like a room that keeps its door closed, not because it's empty, but because it's full, and it needs to trust you before it opens. She trusted me. I wasn't sure when that had happened, or if perhaps it had been happening all along under the sharp surface of our debates. But she trusted me, and I felt the weight and the grace of that the way you feel the gift of something you were waiting for without knowing you were waiting. "Your ankle," she said at one point, very quietly, pressing her forehead to my shoulder. "My ankle is fine." "It's not fine." "It's fine enough." I felt her exhale, almost a laugh, the closest she got without making the sound. We talked in between, in the way that you do when you've been holding things back for a long time, and suddenly the valve is open. Fragments, mostly. Things about our families that we'd only ever gestured at in the seminar context of discussing policy and society, now made personal and specific and real. Her mother, who had been present in all the technical ways and emotionally unreachable in ways that mattered, who had wanted a daughter who was graceful and accommodating, and who had gotten Alara instead, brilliant and intense, and absolutely unwilling to diminish herself to fit a shape that wasn't hers. "I stopped trying to adjust to what she wanted when I was 16, Alara said. "And I've been somewhat cold ever since, I'm told." "You're not cold," I said. "I'm cold to most people." "Most people aren't me." A pause, her hand in my hair. "No," she said. "Most people aren't you." My father, who had left without the kind of dramatic gesture that would have been easier to metabolize. Just a gradual withdrawal, less and less present, until one day my mother and I looked up and the space he'd occupied had simply closed over. "I'm very independent," I told her, which sounds like a personality trait, but is mostly a survival strategy I never bothered to update. "You don't have to be independent right now," she said. I turned to look at her. She said it the same way she said everything, plainly, as a fact, without inflation. And yet, "I know," I said, and leaned into her, which was the most honest response I had. The storm slowed sometime around 4 a.m, not stopping but softening. The battering reduced to a steady conversation of rain. The thunder retreated to the west. The room was warmer without the howling pressure against the glass. We slept eventually, tangled and warm, her breath at my temple, her arm around me, the rhythm of her chest slowing into something deep and unguarded that I was fairly certain almost no one else had ever heard. I lay awake for a little while longer, watched the storm light shift, thought about the last 2 years differently. All those seminars, all those arguments, all those faculty receptions and symposium dinners, and moments in the hallway where we'd looked at each other a beat too long and then looked away. All of it recontextualized. All of it suddenly making a different kind of sense. She had read my abstract first. She had noticed the ankle in November. She had packed an extra shirt. I thought, oh, this has been a long time coming. And then I thought, what comes after morning? And then I tried not to think about that, because morning was not yet here, and what was here was her, and I was not going to spend this being somewhere else. I closed my eyes. Her hand tightened slightly in sleep, as if she'd felt me thinking. I slept. Chapter 6. Morning. Morning came in grays. The storm had burned itself down to a sullen drizzle, the sky the color of old pewter, the city outside moving again in its cautious post-storm way. I was awake before she was, which surprised me. Alara had always struck me as someone who woke up already organized. But she was still asleep, on her side, facing me, one arm extended to the space I'd just vacated when I sat up. She looked entirely different asleep. The composure was elsewhere. What was left was the person underneath it, undefended and very young-looking and slightly heartbreaking in her realness. I made coffee from the room's service station, stood at the window in her borrowed shirt and watched Philadelphia reopen itself. A maintenance crew was clearing leaves from the street below. A lone jogger appeared, already adapting to the new wet world. I thought about the morning, and then I thought about the life after the morning. The Graves Fellowship announcement was next month. It was the most prestigious full-ride research position offered to a graduating student in our program, carrying 3 years of support and a placement at one of 4 institutions: Boston, London, Paris, Geneva. 1 slot. Both Alara and I were finalists. Everyone knew it. Professor Sethi had acknowledged it diplomatically at the last faculty meeting. It was the thing neither of us had directly discussed, because discussing it would have required acknowledging how closely we were watching each other. Last night we had told each other everything, in the specific, brave way that the dark and the rain and the relief of finally make possible. But the fellowship was still real, and there were things about it I didn't know. Things that, as I stood at the window with my coffee going cold, I started to wonder about. I opened my phone. Old habit. Clear notifications, process information, start the day with orientation. There was an email from the faculty administrator. She had sent it at 11 p.m., before we'd even arrived at the hotel, which meant Liora had already received it. It was a confirmation, standard procedural language. The Graves Fellowship office had processed an applicant update. Liora Halden had withdrawn her application. I stood at the window for a long time. The drizzle came down. The maintenance crew moved leaves. My coffee went completely cold. She had withdrawn. She hadn't told me. She had sat through dinner and through all those hours of truth-telling and the night itself, and she hadn't said, "By the way, I withdrew from the thing we've both been building toward for 2 years." She had made a decision that affected both of us, that cleared the path for me, and she had not told me. I heard her stir behind me. "You're up early," she said. Her voice had the low quality of someone just surfacing. I turned around. She was sitting up, hair loose, looking at me with an expression that shifted when she read mine. She knew immediately. I watched her figure it out. "The fellowship," I said. A breath. "Yes." "You withdrew." "Yes." "When?" "Monday, before I came to Philadelphia." She met my eyes steadily, which was a specific kind of bravery. "I made the decision independently."
It wasn't, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want it to change anything between us."
She said it precisely, the way she said things when she'd worked out the language in advance.
"I didn't want you to feel obligated or grateful or like you owed me something."
"I owe you nothing, Liora. We're rivals. I stopped. "We were rivals." "Yes. And you withdrew without telling me, which means you made a unilateral decision that affects my entire professional future."
"It was my application, my decision."
"And Geneva?" I said. "What's in Geneva, Liora?" The pause was long enough to tell me I'd found something. "There was a position," she said, "at the International Law Institute. I was approached in October. I had been thinking about it." "And now?" "Now I'm still thinking about it." I set down the cold coffee cup on the window ledge. "So you withdrew from the fellowship, which I didn't ask you to do, and you might be leaving for Geneva, which you also didn't mention, and last night—" I stopped, pressed my hand against the bridge of my nose. What was last night, then? She was on her feet now, not toward me, not away, just standing. "Last night was true," she said. "All of it." "Then why does it feel like you were saying goodbye?" The words hit the room with a weight I hadn't planned. She looked as if I'd struck her with them, which I hadn't meant to. Or maybe I had, a little. Because I was hurt in the particular way you get hurt when someone does something generous and dishonest at the same time. "I don't know," she said, and her voice cracked, just slightly, the first time I had heard it do that in 2 years. "I don't know what I was doing. I was afraid. I am afraid." "Of what?" "Of choosing something and being wrong. Of wanting something this much and then—" She looked away, out the window. "My mother made very certain choices and was very certain about them, and they were still wrong. I don't have a good model for knowing how to—" She stopped. "I'm not good at this." "You're better at this than you think," I said. My voice had softened without my deciding it would. "Last night. I know what last night was." "Then you know it wasn't a goodbye." She looked at me. Her eyes were very bright, which was as close as Alara Halden got to showing the thing before it happened. "I'm scared to want a life that includes you," she said, "because that's a life where losing you means losing something I can't replace." I crossed the room. I stopped in front of her. "That's called love, Alara," I said. "Not a liability. Love." She looked at me for a long moment in the gray morning light, with the drizzle on the window and Philadelphia restarting below us, and the elegant hotel room full of the specific wreckage and beauty of a night that had changed the shape of things. "I need to think," she said. "I know. I'm not walking away. I just need—" "I know," I said again. "Think. We have a symposium to get to." She exhaled slowly. We got ready for the day with the careful co-navigation of two people who have covered new ground in the night and haven't yet settled the boundary markers. Polite, considerate, the feeling of something unresolved hanging between us like weather that hadn't decided yet what it was going to do. But I had said the word out loud, love, and she hadn't denied it. Chapter 7. The Symposium. The National Symposium on Constitutional Reform was exactly as intense as its name suggested, which meant I spent 6 hours in panels, Q&As, and corridor conversations with my mind running on 2 tracks simultaneously. The professional one that was actually quite excellent at doing its job, and the personal one that kept returning to a gray window, a cold cup of coffee, and the specific quality of Alara Halden's voice when it cracked. Professor Setti had made it in from O'Hare on the first morning flight, cheerfully oblivious to the fact that 2 of his graduate students had spent the night in existential crisis in a king bed, and had opened the symposium with the kind of remarks that made you remember why you'd chosen this field in the first place. Precise, humane, demanding. I presented in the afternoon panel, the 3rd point. I had restructured it, staying up 40 minutes before breakfast to adjust the frame from historical to contextual, the way Alara had suggested. Marcus Chen still pushed back. He always pushed back. It was essentially his brand. But I had the angle, and I navigated it, and when I sat down, I could feel that particular hum of having done something well. Alara was in the audience for my panel. I knew without looking directly at her because I have always known where Alara Halden is in a room. She didn't catch my eye when it was over. But as the applause settled and Chen was already pivoting to the next presenter, I glanced her way, and she gave me the smallest, most deliberate nod. "You did it right." That was what the nod said. I looked away before she could see what my face did. The day passed in the way that busy, intense days pass, fast in the experiencing, dense in the retrospect. I talked to colleagues from 3 other programs about papers I should read and conferences I should attend, and the general shape of the world we were all collectively trying to understand. It was the kind of day that reminded me why I had worked so hard to be there. Alara and I were not alone again. We spoke twice in the professional register, briefly, in the context of a group discussion about Sethi's federalism paper. Both times we were precise and courteous and completely unreadable, which I suspected we were both relieved about and neither of us was entirely happy with. The symposium ended at 6. The dinner reception was at 8. Between them, I walked. Philadelphia in post-storm November is a particular kind of beautiful. The air cleaned down to its essentials, the wet stone of the older buildings going deep gray black, the sky still moving but with intention now, purposeful clouds rather than catastrophic ones. I walked without a specific destination and ended up, inevitably, near the river, which was still running high and fast from the night's rain. I thought about what she'd said. I'm scared to want a life that includes you. And I thought about all the ways I understood that. The same math, the same fear, the knowledge that choosing something real means it can be really lost. My father had not chosen in the end. He had let things happen to him rather than make them happen, and the result was an absence that had shaped the next 14 years of two people's lives. I did not want to let things happen to me. I wanted to choose. And what I wanted to choose was standing somewhere in this city right now, probably at a writing desk, probably reorganizing her notes with more intensity than was warranted, probably thinking about Geneva and fellowships and the correct structural framework for what a future looked like. I wanted to tell her, choose me, choose us. Not because I'm asking you to sacrifice anything, but because some things are worth the risk of loss. Because the alternative, the careful, defended life where you never want something that can be taken, that's also a kind of loss. The long kind, the quiet kind. But I had said what I had to say this morning. Now it was her turn. I turned around and went back to get ready for the reception. I just had to trust that she'd find her way to it. Chapter 8. Wednesday and the Rain. She wasn't at the reception dinner. I noticed within 5 minutes, took 1 glass of wine, made 20 minutes of professional conversation, and then excused myself back to the hotel on the grounds of tiredness that was only partially invented. She wasn't in the room either. She had left a note on the writing desk, precise handwriting on the hotel's notepaper. Back tomorrow. I need to think. I have your key card if you need the spare. Check the desk drawer. The ankle. Ice it tonight. E. I looked at the note for a long time. I iced the ankle. I ordered room service. I slept on my side of the bed, which felt very large. The next morning she came back. I heard the key card before I saw her. It was 8 a.m. and I was awake, had been for an hour, sitting at the writing desk with my laptop and a cold cup of coffee that I had not been drinking. The door opened, and she came in, and she was damp from the rain that had started again, lighter now, persistent, the kind of rain that settles in for days. And she looked like she hadn't slept, but she looked like she had decided something. She stood in the doorway for a moment and looked at me, and I looked at her, and neither of us said anything. Then, I called Geneva this morning. I went very still. I turned it down, she said. I turned it down, and I emailed the fellowship office and told them I was reinstating my application. And then I called my advisor and told him I want to stay in Boston. She was still standing in the doorway, rain damp, composed but with that particular bright quality in her eyes that I recognized now. Not for you, she said, with the specific Liora Halden clarity that could not be mistaken for anything else. I want to be very clear about that. Not to follow you, not to stay because of last night, not because I owe you anything or you owe me anything. Then why? I said. My voice was very careful. Because I have been making choices based on what's defensible rather than what's true for 3 years, she said. Geneva is defensible. Geneva looks correct from every external angle. Boston is what I want. The work here, the people here. She paused, a breath. You, here. I stood up from the desk. I'm not asking you to want the same things I want, she said, and her voice was steady, but working to stay that way. I know we both put in for the fellowship. I know one of us gets it and one of us doesn't, and I know. But I'm also telling you that however it lands, I want to try this.
if you still want to. I crossed the room.
You reinstated your application, I said. Yes. Which means we're rivals again. Professionally, yes. And personally? The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile, but close. Personally, she said, I was hoping for something different. I kissed her. She was cold from the rain and she held on immediately, her hands in my hair, her forehead dropping to mine when we pulled apart. You infuriating, brilliant, impossible person, I said. I know, she said. I've been told. I've been telling you for 2 years. You have. She pulled back slightly to look at me. The fellowship. Liora, if you get it and I don't, we figure it out. It's not that simple. I know it's not simple. I know it's going to be complicated and long distance, and at least one of us is going to be resentful at some point about something. I know that. I looked at her. I'm still choosing this. You're still choosing this. That's not simple. That's brave. She held my gaze for a long time. Okay, she said, quietly, completely. Okay, I said. Outside, the rain came down, patient, steady, the after-storm rain that asks nothing, just fills the quiet. We stood in the hotel room with the gray light of a November morning coming through the window, and both of us slightly damp and slightly undone and completely sure. The clock tower, she said. Sorry? At the university, when we get back. She stepped back, straightened her coat, ran a hand over her rain-damp hair with the air of someone returning to themselves after a long absence, but a different self, one that had been reorganized from the inside. I want to do this properly. Meet me at the clock tower. Ilara, we're already... I know what we already are. I want to do it properly. Her eyes were very clear. Wednesday, the clock tower, 4 o'clock. I looked at her. You're asking me on a date. I'm informing you of our plans. That's essentially the same thing for you, isn't it? Wednesday, she said, 4 o'clock. I smiled. I'll be there. And I was. Chapter 9, The Clock Tower. Wednesday it rained. Of course it did. I was starting to think weather had opinions about the two of us. It was a proper Boston rain, cold, sharp, the kind that gets under your collar no matter how well you've managed the other angles of your coat. I walked from the law library to the clock tower with my hood up and my bag over one shoulder, and the particular feeling of someone walking towards something that had already been decided, which is one of the best feelings in the world. She was there first. I had half expected that. Ilara Halden was constitutionally incapable of being late, which I had always found annoying and now found, still slightly annoying honestly, but with warmth under it. She was standing under the clock tower's shallow arch, which provided approximately 17% of effective rain protection because the arch was decorative rather than functional. She had her coat buttoned to the throat. Her hair was damp again already, which was the most I had ever seen it disrupted from its usual state, and which meant it was damp quite often if this was her rainy day normal. There was a small detail I was filing away. She saw me when I was still 20 feet away, and something happened in her expression. Not dramatic, not a movie moment, just the specific loosening of someone who has been waiting for something, and it has now arrived. I closed the distance. "You're on time," she said. "I'm 2 minutes early. I've been here for 10. That's not a competition, Liora." "No," she agreed, and the corner of her mouth went where I knew it could go now.
It's a data point. The rain fell around us. The clock overhead, which had been put in by some long-ago administrator with more aesthetic ambition than meteorological practicality, ticked in its unhurried way. "I turned down Geneva," she said, even though she'd already told me this. I thought because she wanted to say it here, in the place where we both spent most of our time, where it was real and specific and part of her actual life, rather than a hotel room that would reset for the next guest. "I know," I said. "I want to stay in Boston. I want to keep working with Sethi. I want—" She looked at me. The rain was in her lashes again. She did nothing about it. "I want to walk home from the library with you on rainy Wednesdays. I want to argue with you in seminars where we can both be right sometimes. I want to be the person you call when something goes wrong and you need someone who will tell you the truth." A breath. "I want to be here, Liora." The clock ticked. The rain came down. "The fellowship," I said. "One of us will get it. One of us won't." She said it steadily, having clearly worked through this. "We write our best work, we let it be decided properly, and then we deal with wherever it lands. Together." "Together," I said. "Yes." She reached out and took my hand, which was cold from the rain, and held it with the same decisive certainty she brought to everything. "I'm done being afraid of wanting things. I'm done being defended against my own life." She looked at me with the clear, direct gaze she had always had, but with something new in it. The openness I had seen in a hotel room at midnight, no longer reserved for the dark and the late hour, available in daylight, available in the rain. "You told me it was love," she said. "You were right." I had known it was right when I said it, but hearing it back had a quality nothing else quite matched. "I love you," I said. In the rain, out loud, under the impractical clock tower. "I love you," she said, in her voice, with her particular precision, which made it feel, as it always did, like a documented truth. I kissed her, and she kissed back immediately, with none of the uncertainty of that first time, certain, warm, rain on both our faces and neither of us caring. 2 students from the undergrad program went past with an umbrella and glanced at us and then glanced away with the practiced neutrality of people pretending not to notice something. I noticed them noticing, and I did not pull back. Neither did she. When we stepped apart, her hand was still in mine. "The faculty reception is tonight," she said. "I know. Are you planning to attend?" "Are you?" She looked at me with an expression that was almost a dare. "Yes." I understood what she was asking. I squeezed her hand once. "Then so am I." The rain came down around us, indifferent and beautiful, and we walked together. Chapter 10. Epilogue. The Reception and After. The faculty reception for the symposium presentations was held in the law school's main hall. High ceilings, older wood, the kind of room that smelled faintly of paper and institutional ambition. It was the full roster: faculty, grad students across all years, visiting scholars, a few alumni who turned up at anything with free food and a chance to be asked their opinions. Liora and I arrived separately.
Not by plan, we had simply come from different directions, me from the library, her from Sethi's office where she'd had a follow-up about her reinstated fellowship materials. We arrived within 2 minutes of each other and made brief, professional, entirely ordinary eye contact in the entrance, and then circulated the room. I talked to 2 visiting fellows from Georgetown about comparative federalism. I talked to Priya, who had attended as my +1, and who looked at me with the specific expression of someone who has been watching a slow-moving train approach a destination for 2 years and is experiencing profound satisfaction at the arrival. I gave her absolutely no information, and she pretended to be patient, which was very generous of her. Alara, across the room, was in conversation with Professor Moriarty from the political theory side of the department, who was the kind of academic who had strong opinions about everything, and the departmental seniority to enforce them. She was handling him with the polished ease she brought to all professional situations, engaged, precise, unhurried. And then she ended the conversation. I wasn't watching specifically. I was mid-sentence with Priya about something we'd both read recently, and then peripherally I registered movement. Alara crossing the room, with the directional purposefulness of someone who has decided to go somewhere and is going there. She was coming to me. I finished my sentence, turned. She was there, coat off, wearing a deep blue that I hadn't seen before, utterly composed, the composure now underpinned by something I recognized because I had been the only one to see it, in a hotel room, in the rain, on a Wednesday under a clock tower. She looked at Priya briefly, politely. "Sorry to interrupt." "Please," said Priya, with enormous enthusiasm, and took a large step sideways. Alara looked at me. "Hi," she said, quietly, for my ears only. "Hi," I said back, because apparently hi was our word now. And then she reached out and took my hand, clearly, in the middle of the room. Not an accident, not a brush, a specific, deliberate taking of my hand in hers, with the same certainty she brought to everything she decided was true. "This is Liora Penn," she said to the room at large, or to whoever happened to be close enough to hear, with the quiet and absolute composure of someone making a statement of fact. "She's the best mind in our year." A pause, the corner of her mouth. "And she's my girlfriend." The room did various things. Some people heard, some didn't. Sethi looked up from his conversation with an expression of deep unsurprise. Priya made a sound she immediately converted into a cough. None of it mattered particularly. What mattered was she had said it, here, out loud, with her hand in mine. I leaned in close enough to say only to her, "You know Marcus Chen is standing directly to your left." "I know," she said, eyes forward, perfectly composed, faintly devastating. "I placed myself deliberately." I laughed, real and startled and full, the kind of laugh I had with very few people. She looked at me when I did, with the specific expression she sometimes got when I laughed, as if the sound was something she'd been wanting and was glad to be getting. "You're impossible," I said. "You've told me," she said. "I'm going to keep telling you." "I'm aware." She squeezed my hand once, brief and firm and certain. "I'm planning on it." There was no dramatic ending after that. No single moment where the music swells and everything is resolved and tied neat. Life doesn't offer those, and if it did, neither of us would have trusted them. What there was instead, the fellowship, when it was announced 6 weeks later, went to me. I accepted it. Boston placement, 3 years, the work I had wanted.
Liora submitted her own work for a different fellowship the following semester and received it, overlapping, different funding, same city. We were both right that it would be complicated. We were also both right that it was worth it. She learned, over time, to leave the door fully open, not to perform openness, but to let things be seen without the defense layer between them and the air. It was not fast and it was not linear, and there were evenings when the wall went back up and I had to decide whether to wait or to knock. And I got better at reading, which was needed. I learned, over time, that independence is a skill and not a personality, which meant I could also set it down sometimes. I learned to say I need, rather than just I can manage. I learned that being held is different from needing to be held, and that Liora Halden was very good at the former, even if I had to remember to ask. We argued, frequently and well. Sethi once said, at a faculty gathering, that the quality of his seminars had improved significantly since Penn and Halden had sorted out whatever it was they'd been sorting out, and then looked at us over his glasses with the total composure of someone who had known exactly what was happening for most of 2 years and had simply declined to intervene. The Ashcroft Hotel reopened their symposium block the following year with an updated reservation system. I know because I checked, out of a specific and entirely unnecessary curiosity. The cactus I eventually bought her, on the occasion of our 6-month anniversary, was named after the hotel. She kept it on her writing desk at home. Our home, by that point. The one we'd navigated into with the same combination of argument and precision and unexpected tenderness that seemed to be our signature. His name was Ashcroft. He was very small and very hardy and, I was informed, impossible to kill. Some things, Liora told me, are built to last. She was right. She usually was. And for the first time since we met, there was no rivalry left in the silence between us. Only the beautiful, terrifying, perfect truth of choosing each other. Thank you for listening. Until next time.